what is Bitcoin? And why are we here today? Bitcoin is an innovation in the technology of money. How old is the technology of money? Who wants to hazard a guess? Who wants to guess? How old is money? Anyone?
Since the Romans.
Since the Romans? We need to go a bit further behind than that. Okay, how old is money? Anybody else want to hazard a guess? That's a good start. Romans, let's go further back. How about Cro-Magnon? How about Neanderthalis? How about millions of years old, perhaps? And yet we don't even know how old it is. Because what we have observed is that money emerges as a cultural artifact even among primate societies. Monkeys can learn how to use money. And so we believe that money is the oldest technology humans have developed. It is older than fire, it is older than the wheel, and it is perhaps as old as language itself, because money is language. Money is a form of language. And in these million years of development, money has experienced maybe 4 major technological changes. Money as abstract token, shells, beads, feathers, bones, things that are scarce in an environment, easy to transport, have aesthetic or primary value, and are used as an abstraction to express value to each other. Nuts, seeds, colorful feathers, beads, seashells. We see that throughout human society hundreds of thousands of years ago. And then the first major revolution in money was the use of precious metals in pressed coins, which goes back to perhaps Babylonian times, certainly popularized by the Romans, as you mentioned. That's the first technological adaptation of money. And for thousands of years, that's what money was. Precious metals pressed with the faces of important people. And then the second great technological revolution of money was to change money from precious metals to pieces of paper that showed that you had a deposit of precious metals in banks. And the introduction of commercial banking, which in those days was a great liberalizing movement, because it meant that money could now be used by people who were not part of the aristocracy. Until then, kings used precious metals, merchant class used precious metal, but most of the rest of society didn't really have access to the basic banking capabilities. And when the introduction of commercial banking and paper money, money changed. And it changed, and it became a great equalizer, and it gave opportunity to millions and then billions of people. So let me ask you, how do you think people reacted when paper money was introduced? Oh, that's a fantastic idea. Paper money, it makes perfect sense. It's light, I can carry it easily, I can give it to other people, they can exchange it for other paper money that has different numbers on it. This is much better. No, that was not the reaction. That was not the reaction. The reaction was, that's not money. That's not money. Give me real money. I don't believe in your fake money. I want the real money, the money you can bite to see if it's silver or gold, the money that has the face of the king on it. I want the real money. This paper money that's like a deposit slip for a bank account that maybe holds gold, who the hell knows? That's a scam. Now, the Italian master of scams, Mr. Ponzi, had not been born then, but if he had, they'd call it a Ponzi scheme. They didn't know what a pyramid scheme was, so they didn't call it a pyramid scheme, they just called it fraud. So the third revolution, or the second revolution in money, was greeted with universal disapproval. It took 400 years for people to get comfortable with the idea that paper money had value, because they had to understand that the value of money does not come from the precious metals. And it does not even come from the face of the king that's stamped on the money. It comes from the economic activity it creates through its exchange. It comes from the social bonds it creates. We make money valuable by using it. Money is a great societal illusion. If I believe that the piece of paper I have in my pocket will buy me 6 eggs tomorrow because somebody else will take that to buy something else, that has value. And that illusion is what creates value, and the exchange is what creates value. And it's amazing because once you start talking about Bitcoin and people start asking questions about why Bitcoin works and what Bitcoin is, you realize that in order to have a conversation about what Bitcoin is and why it works, you first have to have a conversation about what money is and why money works. Because, ironically, the most important technology we have in our society is never discussed in school, is never discussed in science, is almost never discussed between parents and their children. And yet children ask the most interesting questions about money. Mommy, why can't we have more? Why do other families have more than we do? Why can't everyone have more? Why can't we make our own? These simple questions that children ask, and most parents have no way to answer that. What do you say? Susie, go study inflation and come back only when you understand the balance between inflation, hyperinflation, and stagflation. We don't discuss money, and yet it's a very important technology. In the 1950s, we saw probably the last and fourth greatest revolution in money, the new technology of credit cards. A piece of plastic, which at first was a piece of paper, invented in 1950 by Diners Club, a piece of paper that represented a credit account that you could use instead of traveler's checks. And of course, everybody who saw this new form of money was like, oh, wow, this makes sense. I don't even need to carry all of those pieces of paper. This will be much more convenient. Let's all do this. No, that's not what they said. What they said was, this isn't money. We only take real money, Federal Reserve note, dollars here. Take your little Diners Club thing elsewhere. I don't understand it. And it took 30 years before people broadly understood that a piece of plastic is also money. Why? Because you can use it to buy eggs. And really, that's the only definition of money you need to have. And now, almost 1 million years into this technology, Bitcoin comes along in 2009. And everybody goes, oh, that's brilliant. We don't need banks, we don't need governments, it's completely decentralized, let's all use this. Not quite. What they say is, that's not money. It's a Ponzi scheme, it's a pyramid scheme, it's fraud, it's not money, it has no value, it has the no face of a king or a queen on it, it doesn't have the official approval of a government, how could it possibly be worth anything? And yet I pay for my plane tickets with it. And somehow this not money allows me to get into a large steel tube and ascend to 37,000 feet and be transported across continents. That sounds like something that is money. I have been living on Bitcoin for more than 3 years. It is the vast majority of my income. That kind of sounds like money. I can use it to buy products and services. I earn it by selling my own services and products. That kind of sounds like money. But it's not money as we knew it. After 1 million years, we are now standing at the beginning of the fourth revolution of money. And we have money that is independent of governments and independent of banks. Money that allows every one of us not to have a bank account on our phone, but to have an entire bank on our phone. I have an application here that can generate 2 billion account numbers, that gives me access to international wire transfers, that allows me to do merchant processing, import-export commerce with any country in the world, and transmit and receive money at the speed of light anywhere for very little fees. I don't have a bank account in my pocket. I have a bank. Because banking is now an app. And I am a banker. And you are a banker. And you are a banker. And we are all bankers. Because none of us are bankers. And that fundamentally changes our relationship with money. And this money is not owned by any government. It's not controlled by any nation. I remember a time when the only airline I could take for my country had my country's flag on the tail of every airplane. And the only phone company that operated in my country was the national phone company that had its flag on the top of the building. And those were ridiculous ideas. The idea that you can only have an airline that belongs to a country and have exclusive monopoly over all airline operations is ridiculous. Why is it so ridiculous to think that the idea of a national currency with the flag of a nation on it that has complete monopoly within a country, why is that not ridiculous? It is. We just accept things because they've been that way for as long as we remember, not because they make any sense. And so now we have other options. Bitcoin allows us for the first time to have choices in the number of currencies we use. And it's important to understand that we have to look at Bitcoin from a different perspective. People ask me, which is the first country that is going to adopt Bitcoin as its national currency? That would be a disaster. That is a terrible idea. That's an idea as terrible as the euro. Creating a monopoly of money with a national flag on it is the exact opposite of what Bitcoin is about. The idea of currency being a zero-sum geopolitical game of competition between nation-states is ridiculous, and Bitcoin is not going to play that game. That's not the point. Which country is going to adopt Bitcoin? The internet. The largest, most populous concentration of human beings collaborating in the world today is not a country. It is the internet. And the internet has its own currency. It has already adopted Bitcoin. Which banks will start using Bitcoin? None of them. Which countries will start using Bitcoin? None of them. Will Bitcoin replace national currencies? Of course not. Because money is a language. And if you think of money as a language, the idea of one universal money is as ridiculous as the idea of one universal language. You all speak English, right? Did that influence your decision to abandon Portuguese? Do you only learn one language because, after all, it is the universal language? There is no universal language. There is no universal money because there is no universal culture. There is no universal religion. There is no universal state. We are not a universal nation. We are a diverse species. So we have diverse language and diverse culture and diverse religion. And now we have diverse money. And if that's threatening to a government, the idea that individuals have a choice to use diverse money, then you have to ask yourself, why is my government threatened by financial freedom? And ironically, some of the governments that have currency crisis right now are not really threatened by Bitcoin. And neither should the banks be threatened by Bitcoin. What Bitcoin represents is opportunity. More than 4 billion people in the world have very, very limited or no access to banking whatsoever because of politics, because of geographic barriers, because of technological barriers, not because they have no value as productive human beings. And we have an opportunity with this technology and technologies like it to take 4 billion people and make them part of this new global economy, to give them access to the same financial power as a bank, without borders, without control, without censorship, and with full financial freedom, autonomy, and privacy.